Okay, I'm here to present Viridi, which is an apartment building. My name is Ian Briggs from Plus Architecture. So the site is just inboard from Commercial and Chapel Street. It's on Grattan Street, opposite Grattan Gardens. I'm going to be rotating the plans occasionally, so bear with me. But longitudinally, it runs up and down north-south. The short ends short ends north and south. And here we go. So conceptually, the location was really critical to us. Originally, it was a brick-fronted old warehouse and a couple of tin sheds. And really, obviously, the main, driver for the location was this relationship between Grattan Street and Grattan Gardens. The two main critical points that were presented to us by council to control the site was firstly that they wanted to extend a link from the library at the top end of Grattan Gardens, a pedestrian link through our site and beyond to a newly established pocket garden to our west, which meant we had to foreshorten the northern end of the site by about 5 metres. And the second issue was that where the yellow line is the footpath between Grattan Street and Grattan Gardens, which was not able to be overshadowed during winter solstice. And given the fact that we're on the western side of the site of the street, presented a fairly dramatic, impact on the proposed envelope. So, the first sketch that was done for the site, once we understood these conditions, was really an idea of Grattan Street being in the middle of an extended park, in a sense, taking the idea of extending the linkage between parks and applying it to the whole building. So we had on the right-hand side the gardens, on the left-hand side the building. Council wanted to have some sort of street wall recognition, so we had roughly a one and a half story high expression street wall, but from there back the building needed to not overshadow the footpath opposite us, which indicated some sort of stepped or, in this case, sloping facade line. So explaining to the client, what we were doing is basically dragging the park up and over our building. Really, then it was a case of, well, we wanted to explore this idea of how the park is integrated onto the facade of the building. And we also loved the idea that this building was going to be some sort of public backdrop to the park. And we started to look at the glazed tiles that are typified at least that sort of data height around a lot of the old Victorian era pubs in the area and beyond. So this was the concept presented to the client, which and I forgot to mention, the client has owned the land for quite a long time, and they're preparing to build. They wanted us to build an apartment building, but they were retaining ownership of it. It's only 43 apartments, so it doesn't qualify as a build to rent, but effectively the apartments are under one ownership. And the client's 2 children were going to be taking 2 of the top apartments. So when we presented to them, quite nicely, the actual end user was going to be judging us in this whole design process. We employed facade engineers to try and deliver the vision of the external facade, which was this sort of folding waterproof envelope that draped over the building. And they came up with a GRC solution, which was basically concrete panels with a brick motif stamped into it, which did not remotely capture the effect that we wanted. So we said to the builder and said to the client, well, look, it's really just a big roof, so why can't we do a big roof? Unfortunately, for this class of building, class 2, no one had done a contiguous waterproof roof form that overlapped from internal apartments down to a streetscape. So we were kind of going into unknown territory. We tried with local manufacturers. This was their best shot at providing a tiled solution that captured some of the green colours that we wanted to capture in the render that you saw, and they weren't really hitting the mark. So working with the builder, they sourced these tiles from Portugal. And this is 2021, so fairly peak lockdown time. So they started to work with a tiler, the only tiler that they could find in Southeast Australia, to tile a class 2 building and warrant it. They started to work with a window flasher and a roofing flasher, the only one they could find in Southeast Australia, Southern East Australia, to actually warrant the flashing. And they started to build up these prototype facades. So those 4 tiles you see there narrowed down to 3 colours that we decided actually were sufficient to get the colour range to represent the foliage in the park that sat opposite us. So the next step that we needed to take was to understand what the mix of those tiles were. So we had our in-house renderer mock up on the building line, a building model, those 3 colours, and then he basically tuned them as if you were tuning a piece of music with those 3 colours, the proportions and ratios of those colours. And he said we have a lot of light, a little bit of light, and then not much light tile in the middle, and so the other tiles were then mixed accordingly. We found our perfect solution based on using our human eyes and actually judging it against the photographs and the park space. The next challenge was that the renderer gave us the percentages of the mix of colours, which you can see there represented by the Dulux colours in the top right corner. But we needed to tell the builder how many of each of those colours out of the 15,000 colours, 15,000 tiles, each of those colours represented, and then map it onto a facade. When we told the builder first that we just wanted those colours randomly scattered across the facade, he said, well, that's not going to work really. So we used the random number generator to map out those 3 colour tiles, mapped it onto the facade. He then wrote those numbers onto his arm, and off he went. So we had all the framing, steel framing digitally cut, and then Davo the tiler went to work. Planning wise, we have our 1 basement, entry off Bratton Street for the residents, townhouses activating that side setback on the northern end of the building, retail spaces activating Grattan Street, and bike parking, car parking, and basement entry down. On the first floor, in line with the area's desire for first level workspaces, communal space, which is now being leased out. And then as we move up, you'll see the impact of that sloping facade line until we get to the 2 kids' apartments at the top. The profile of the building. Sustainability, so it was designed 2016, but we've managed to still go better than the current minimum requirements. So that was a great outcome. So 7.3 NATO star rating. We've covered as much of the roof that was left over with solar, using on-site storage for water. We recycled the bricks from the original buildings. We had to come up with some fairly innovative work with the insulation because, again, it was a Class 2 building using a Class 1 construction and a cladding system, and extensive bike parking. So $9.5 million budget. You can see there the numbers, but what was really great was that even though we're building through COVID, we delivered on time and on budget. And it's interesting, because of the 3 angled facades, the vertical facade of the street, the medium angle and the top angle, the building changes colour throughout the day. The greens change colour. Sometimes it looks eucalyptus in its tones, as you can see there. Sometimes it looks more European evergreen. And then moving through the interiors, it's pretty humble. It's all, as I said, effectively built to rent. But the nice thing is that you know you're in a sloping building when you're on the inside. You know where you are. Of course, when it changes to autumn colours, it doesn't really work anymore.
I was going to say.
So we have in a highly activated street, unique visual addition to the neighbourhood, enhancing public realm linkages, high amenity for the interior spaces, sustainable features, and we've basically, as far as we understand, and I'll put that as a caveat, we've pretty much invented a new cost-effective, repeatable cladding system for Class 2 buildings in Australia.